I used to believe that some people were just born with a spark, something that made them light up a room, take risks, and smile without worry. I wasn't one of them. At 33, I worked in a cubicle answering customer complaints and repeating scripts that drained my spirit. Every day felt like walking through fog. I wasn't unhappy in any dramatic way. I just felt invisible. Like I'd quietly settled into a version of life where nothing hurt too much, but nothing lit me up either. The fear of not being good enough clung to me like a second skin. It wasn't loud, but it was constant. I'd sit through meetings and never speak up, convinced my ideas weren't worth sharing. I avoided eye contact in crowded spaces, hoping no one would notice me. Even at home, silence followed me. My phone barely rang, and I didn't reach out. The loneliness wasn't new. It was familiar. Safer than the risk of opening up and being disappointed again. Then one rainy afternoon, as I dragged myself up the stairs to my apartment, I heard a soft voice call out from across the hall. "You always look like the rain lives in your eyes." I turned and saw Mrs. Linden, my elderly neighbor, who wore floral cardigans and smiled like she knew all the secrets of life. She was leaning on her cane, holding a cup of tea in each hand. She held one out to me. "Come sit. You need this more than I do." I don't know why I accepted. Maybe it was the way she said it. Gentle, but with no room for argument. Her apartment smelled like cinnamon and old books, and we sat by the window while the rain tapped against the glass. She didn't ask many questions. She just talked. About birds nesting near her windowsill. About a boy she once loved who danced barefoot in the rain. And about how she survived losing him by choosing to believe life still had beauty. That day, something small shifted. I didn't walk back into my apartment heavier than before. I walked in carrying warmth I didn't expect. She started leaving little notes at my door. Short, handwritten thoughts like, "You are not a mistake," or "Today will be better if you let it." I kept them in a drawer at first, unsure what to make of them. But I read them, and somehow they started sticking. One day I asked her, "Why do you write these things to me?" She smiled and said, "Because no one ever wrote them for me, and I know how that can feel." Her words didn't solve my pain, but they reached into it and made room for something new. That was the beginning of something I didn't yet have a name for. It wasn't joy, not yet. But it was hope, quiet, slow, and just strong enough to keep me moving. A few weeks later, something happened at work that would have normally made me panic. My manager asked me to lead a training session for the new hires. I blinked at him, thinking surely he meant someone else. But he was looking right at me, smiling like he believed I could handle it. The old me would have found a way to back out. Maybe claimed to be sick or said I had a family emergency. But this time, I didn't say no. I nodded, even though my palms went cold and my voice trembled with fear. The moment I agreed, doubt flooded in. What if I messed up? What if they laughed at me or worse, ignored me? That night, I sat with Mrs. Linden again. She listened as I rambled through my panic. And then, without missing a beat, she handed me a sticky note. It read, "You've survived every bad day so far. This one is not different." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but I kept it in my pocket the next day. Preparing for that session became my battlefield. I practiced in front of the mirror, stumbling over words, my voice flat and uncertain. But each day, I added something new, a sentence I believed in, a smile I didn't force, a reminder from a note Mrs. Linden left for me that morning. Speak as if you believe it, your heart already knows how. The day came, and I stood in front of the new employees with shaking hands. But I spoke. Not perfectly, not boldly, but honestly. I shared not just the protocols, but how I'd learned from my mistakes, how I'd grown in this role by staying curious, by caring, by showing up even when I didn't feel ready. When I finished, they clapped, not out of politeness, but because they'd felt something real. That night, I cried, not from fear, but from release. I realized I wasn't broken. I'd just been hiding from myself. Every small act of positive thinking had been like watering a plant I thought was dead. It was growing. I was growing. Weeks later, I was offered a promotion. But even more valuable than that title was the change in how I saw myself. I started walking into rooms like I belonged there. I started calling old friends. I even signed up for a weekend painting class, something I'd always wanted, but never dared to try. One evening, Mrs. Linden pressed a small envelope into my hand. Inside was a card with just one line. Now you write your own notes? She passed away 2 months later in her sleep. The grief stung, but it didn't break me. Because her voice had become mine. And I finally understood. Positive thinking isn't about pretending life is perfect. It's about choosing moment after moment to believe that you matter, that your story isn't over, that every scar has something to teach you. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more human stories that matter.